Hello again. Chris Lee and Alfred Ezman here to talk baseball, the Knoxville Regional, where we've got Tennessee, Southern Miss, Indiana, and Northern Kentucky in order from 1 to 4. Of course, the Vols, the host here. We're going to get into each team and give you a little glimpse of each roster, make some predictions at the end. Before we get the reminder, we are brought to you by BetOnline, your number one source for all your summer sports this season, from MLB, golf, the NBA, and NHL playoffs. All the latest stats, news, and scores available to follow your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet online where the game starts. All right, Alfred. Baseball in Knoxville, Friday afternoon and night. You saw the Vols up close and personal. So did I last week in Hoover. Tennessee comes into this with a little momentum, having won the tournament in Hoover, which is maybe harder to do than win the College World Series sometimes in some ways. But probably not really. But it's a high degree of difficulty event. Vols coming in with a lot of confidence after what they did in the SEC tournament.
Yeah, they are. They were clicking on all cylinders. I mean, we know that 11 of these teams are in the NCAA tournament, and if Tennessee's coming out on top out of those 11 teams and just the remainder of the SEC, they're doing something right. They're pitching well, hitting well. They were subbing. We talked about it when we revealed the bracket, or when we reacted to the bracket, and we talked about the championship game. They were subbing people in and out all tournament, seeing what they had, and everyone seemed to play a part in some kind of way, whether you were a positional player or a pitcher. So they're, the number one national seed for a reason, and they got to feel very, very confident about their shot to win it all heading into this tournament.
All right, let's start with the Vols. Our graphics department, boy, we got fancy overnight. Look at what we've done here. Let's talk about Tennessee's lineup. I think Burke, Moore, or fixtures, Christian Moore, probably in league only play, had the best offensive season than anybody in the league. I'd have to check that against Charlie Condon, but I think he won the Triple Crown in SEC only play. Guy is the school record holder, 4 home runs, along with Blake Burke, who's second. You've got the left side of the infield. We saw some strange stuff at times in the SEC tournament. You saw Billy Amick, who was in a little bit of a slump, take a seat for a bit. He came back and hit a home run. Dean Curley, their shortstop, who took the job from Ariel Antigua earlier in the year, I think took a seat for one of those games too, and maybe came out for defense at one point. Outfield has been, I feel like, pretty constant. Dreiling in left, Inslee in center. Inslee is not a great hitter by comparison to his teammates, but a pretty competent center fielder. You got Tiers in right, who had really good seasons, I thought, both ways. Got a cannon of an arm out there. And in the DH spot, you got rotation there. Cannon Peebles, the NC State transfers, hit a little bit better lately. Some of the pop that he showed at NC State has started to show up. Dalton Barger, the Missouri transfer, is a guy who's played some. Reese Chapman hit a home run in Hoover, got plenty of power. They got other guys on the bench too that we don't even list on this. But it was easily a top 5 lineup in America, probably more like top 2 or 3, maybe even number 1, just depending on how you want to judge them. Tennessee does get a little bit of a boost from playing in what is definitely a hitter's park at Lindsey Nelson Stadium. Of course, I think you've got to recognize that on the flip side of that makes the pitching numbers even better than they look. But anyway, I've talked enough. Your thoughts on the Vols lineup here?
Yeah, top to bottom, they got guys that can hit for power. I mean, look at that home run column. Tons of guys in double figures. Christian Moore, 28 home runs. That's a very incredible season for him. Blake Burke, MVP of Hoover. It goes without saying his power is also very nice if he connects with the ball. And, the subs we have on this list, Dalton Bargo and Reese Chapman, came in and made some plays in Hoover as well. I think both games against Vanderbilt they had, Dalton Bargo came in for Billy Amick at third base. Reese Chapman came in. I believe Reese Chapman DH'd that first game at least against Vandy. And they started, they have a lot of fixtures they can flip in and out with this lineup. They have a lot of guys that can throw in the DH spot, and it's going to be a headache for these opposing pitchers that are coming to Knoxville this weekend.
Yeah, and the pitching is going to be a headache too, because I think that's the part that got Tennessee through the tournament. This wasn't the Tennessee lineup that was getting 9-10 runs every night. The park had something to do with that. It's more of a pitcher's park, although the ball got out there plenty across the board. But I think the big thing, Drew Beam is their rock. I don't think we've got him listed as starting pitcher 1 here. I think he's been out of the 2-hole all year.
Yeah.
They will probably go Chris Stamos as an opener, perhaps, or they could just go AJ Causey. What they've been doing is giving Stamos anywhere from 4 to 12 or 13 batters, and then bringing Causey in. Start with the lefty, go righty. Causey is listed as a reliever, and that's kind of what he is, but he's pitched more like starters innings. I think he's second or third on the team in innings because they bring him in, and when he comes in, sometimes he doesn't come out. He will go the distance. So he's pitched pretty well of late. He's had some rocky spots of the season. Xander Sechrist in the 3-hole has been pretty consistent through, I think, 6 outings in Hoover. And then I presume you will see Beam in game 2. And I feel like you're starting to see more of this. A lot of guys are putting their most dependable guys in that 2 spot, which is kind of smart because that's your key matchup in the regional. If you're a big favorite, you play that winner's bracket game and you play your best opponent in the regional usually. So I would presume that's how Vitello lines up. And then the bullpen was great too. I'll let you talk about that because we saw a lot of guys pitch well in Hoover.
Yeah, a ton. That was probably one of the top stories from this team. I'll start. Andrew Benke came through, had a lot of good innings for the Vols out of the bullpen, was very good. He was it was a little tense in that SEC championship. He loaded the bases against LSU at one point, but besides that, very, very good outing for him throughout the Hoover tournament. Kirby Cannell, kind of like was that high leverage. He was the 8th inning guy before the close the Vols had, who would come in. He would even go more innings. He would go 2 to 2 2/3, something like that sometimes in Hoover. And, he's been there forever. He's a rock in that program. He's probably Tony Vitello's like right-hand man at this point when it comes to how the program goes in Knoxville and stuff. Aaron Combs, we know, closed the SEC championship. He got 2 key strikeouts to end it and to give the Vols the title. And then Dylan Lloyd. Dylan Lloyd's a guy, they used him a lot in the midweek. And he came into the SEC championship and he pitched over 4 innings and over 4 innings of really good baseball. LSU had 1 run all the way up until the 9th inning. And so this pitching staff is deep. We have AJ Russell up there as well. We didn't really talk about him, but obviously we're going to monitor that injury throughout the week. I haven't really heard anything major about it yet, but I'm going to go ahead and assume that they're going to go without him. And if that's the case, I'm with you, Chris. I think they do a Stamos open to open the series against Northern Kentucky in their first game, and then Causey and Snead get thrown out there after. And then obviously I do think Drew Beam is that second hole guy that they have. So if that way Tennessee, needs to win their second game, if they lost somehow or something like that, they have Drew Beam out there to get the job done.
Yeah, Russell was their most dominant starter to start the season. I still think of that outing. I think against Texas Tech where he struck out 7 or 8 guys in a row, but he's been hurt since then. They threw him twice in Hoover. Didn't go great at the time. It wasn't a disaster, but it wasn't, full on AJ Russell either. So you got to wonder about that. But what you did see them do, I think Nate Snead's their most valuable guy. It may not be their best pitcher, but he's a guy who comes in and he can get you. He can come in the 4th inning of a 4-3 game and get you to the finish line with the win. Throws 100. The strikeout numbers don't necessarily reflect that, and he had a rough outing in Hoover too. But he's been one of my favorite relievers in the league all year. They got some other guys not on here. Marcus Phillips, a guy that brings it 98, 99. Now, I think it may get a little straight at times because he will start to get hit after 4 or 5 hitters. But, hey, you got a deep pitching staff. You can use him selectively, maybe to some righties to get a couple of big outs and blow it by guys. So Tennessee's got some pitching depth that's not even listed here that I think deserves some attention too. All right, let's move on to Southern Miss. What do we know about the Golden Eagles? We did see them play Tennessee last year in a super regional that was in Southern Miss. We've got Slade Wilkes. I know a guy that you remember well from a year ago. Tell us about the Golden Eagles here.
Yeah, Slade Wilkes, I think, is the anchor of this team at the DH spot. He was there last year. He knows the intensity of that game, of those games, and what happened. Obviously, that was like a lot of people know that as the Chase Burns series. That's how his name was kind of made there to get the Vols to Omaha a year ago. And they're a pretty solid lineup. They have a lot of guys with good on base percentages, a few over 400. And if you look at that bench, I made a joke. I made a joke about doing this team. That's not Billy Butler. It's not Billy Butler of the Kansas City Royals. It's a different Billy Butler. But Billy Butler and Lawson Odom down there on base percentages over 400. Billy Butler has a pretty good slugging percentage as well, even though the home run numbers aren't crazy. They just have a solid lineup. And then with the pitching, looking at it, they obviously have Will Armistead we have listed on here. He is actually out, so I would scratch him from that fourth starter spot. We'd have to see. I would assume the Golden Eagles go with like Colby Allen or one of their guys who's pitched a lot of innings in the bullpen to start in his place. But overall, I mean, they're a very, very good team, and they can hit the ball. They can hit the ball solid. They won the Sun Belt tournament for a reason, so they'll be a challenge at the 2 seed spot.
Yeah, interested to see how that one works out. Let's talk about Indiana. That's a team I saw a little bit this year. They're the 3 seed. Of course, they'll match up with Southern Miss in game 1. What do we know about the Hoosiers?
Yeah, with Indiana, just kind of looking down the list here. Interesting player they have, Joey Brzezinski, I think that's how you say it. Switch hitter at the DH spot. That he provides a challenge, good on base percentage. They don't really hit a lot of home runs. I guess they're that middle part of our little chart we have here with Tyler Kearney, Devin Taylor, Carter Matheson. They hit home runs, but besides that, not a lot of guys hit home runs that much. They have a pretty good starting pitcher, a pretty good first guy, and Connor Foley. I think he could give the Eagles some decent work if they decide to go with him. The base runners per inning, just a little over 1, does not give up the long ball that much, which is key heading to this part. And, gets a lot of strikeouts. 30% strikeout rate's pretty good. So I think they have certain key players that are going to have to come up big for them to do something, because obviously they're in this region with Tennessee and Southern Miss, who I think are the clear favorites here. And they're going to need those 2 key players to kind of step up big if they want to make some noise.
All right, let's talk about Northern Kentucky for a minute. That is Tennessee's opponent in the opener. Team that won the Horizon, I believe, or the Summit. I get those 2 mixed up. But in any case, yeah. Tell us about the Norse.
Yeah, Northern Kentucky, they won the Horizon League. They have a lot of good guys who get on base very often. You look at some of these on base percentages. Once again, 424. Oh, I can't read that. 95, I believe. I think that says 95. 417.
Yeah, 495.
Okay, good. And then Cleary Simpson, over 500 on base. That's really, really good. And a few of these guys can hit a lot of home runs as well. Liam McFadden, Ackman, 20 plus this season. So they just have a few power guys. They're kind of an all-around balanced lineup. They like to steal bases a lot. That's a key thing too. If you go over to the stolen base chart, a few guys in double figures. Traven Moss, I think that's 26 stolen bases. That's a very good season on the base paths for them. So if I'm these catchers like Cal Stark and the other catchers on Southern Miss and Indiana, I'm looking at the scouting report for Northern Kentucky and saying, hey, you're going to have to be, alert and ready to pop at any time, because they're going to want to steal bases, especially against Tennessee if they find themselves behind early, which is very possible.
Yeah, the computers did not hit them as one of the stronger 4 seeds in the field. I think that was mostly due to pitching, because the lineup, my goodness, you got 4 guys over 450 on base.
Yeah.
I'm guessing they played in the hitter's park. You got 8 guys, 393 are up, and the last guy in there on base percentage is Brennan Rowe, their shortstop, 374. Hit home runs. They ran a lot, as you said. That they walk a lot. So I mean, this can't be just a throw off bullpen game, maybe, given the way they hit, but the pitching for them also maybe left some things to be desired. I think, to put it fairly. I think Tanner Gillis, their third starter, the only guy that's got numbers that kind of jump off the screen, is this guy might be a dude. But and look, we didn't see him play. We watched the SEC a lot, but we can read box scores and stats. And so I think, Northern Kentucky would be dangerous for Tennessee in a sense where, if whoever you throw up there on Friday night doesn't have his A game, you could have to be going to your next guy pretty quickly. But other than that, I feel like Tennessee's going to get some runs off that staff.
I did too. And, Cal Stark, we talked about him, how much he's improved this year. He's been so good defensively. We saw, I'm sure, Chris, you saw that pick play he had against LSU. I mean, they're going to, like, much respect to Northern Kentucky and their ability to steal bags, but they're going to have to be careful with Cal Stark back there, because if, Traven Moss or one of these other guys who steals a lot is leading too far off of first, you could see that happen again. And that's something you don't want, especially when you want to try to pull this upset off against the best team in college baseball. But yeah, I think they need to be, but at the same time, Tennessee does need to be, alert and careful against this team. You can't take it off, and really, you can't take any games off at this point going forward.
Yeah. Tennessee is going to be the overwhelming favorite in these things as we get to picks. I think your formula for something weird to happen would be, again, Northern Kentucky putting up a couple of big innings late, and then maybe Tennessee getting a little tight, because that number one is a big target on people's backs.
Right.
That's been a spot that nobody's come out of and won the whole thing since 1999 when Miami did it. And sometimes you've seen some teams occasionally fall in their regional. I'm thinking of Vandy in 2007 was one that did it as the one seed. It's not common. I don't think, having watched Tennessee a lot, and we didn't watch the other teams, but again, we look at the stats. I don't see a team that I think I love their chances to knock off the Vols. Now, I think the team that's got the best shot is Southern Miss. Got a few guys that hit some home runs. They do get on base, as you noted. It's going to be more of a doubles and triples type team, probably. They don't walk an inordinate amount, and Tennessee doesn't give you a ton of free passes as a staff. But I think the thing that sticks out is some of the home run rates for their starters. Oldham and Mazza under 3%, which is pretty good. McCarty English out of the bullpen, righty they use sometimes, didn't give up a home run all year. Chandler Best, their best lefty, no pun intended, out of the pen, 1.4% home run rate. I'm looking on these top 10, 11 pitchers. They've only got one guy that gave up a 3.5% home run rate or higher, which is, again, pretty good. So if there is a key to beating the Vols, it is keeping the ball in the yard. And Southern Miss looks like the team that would be most likely to challenge Tennessee.
Yeah, I agree. And, you mentioned those home run numbers being low is very crucial with the stadium they're going to. I mean, I'm not sure about Hattiesburg and what ballpark they have, but, Tennessee's is very clearly a hitter's park if you look at the dimensions of it. And obviously, I think that's going to be very key for them. But with that being said, though, I just think, this Tennessee team has too much of a wave that they're riding right now to lose really any of these games. I'd be shocked if they lost one here to start the tournament. Maybe I could see them dropping one in the Super Regional. That's way ahead of what we're talking about. But just sticking to the Knoxville Regional, the Vols are just riding too high, I think, to really lose to any of these teams.
Yeah, I'm taking Tennessee, and I think you're with me on this.
Yes, Tennessee as well for me.
We'll take the Vols to advance the next weekend, where they would face the winner of the Greenville Regional, which has got East Carolina, Wake Forest. That'd be a very interesting matchup because of the Chase Burns element, and a couple of a 4 seed there in Evansville is no pushover either. But we're not going to talk about that regional, but we will talk about it next weekend if things go chalk in this one for the Vols. We will be talking about the regional as it unfolds. The best way to get that, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. For Alfred Ezman, I'm Chris Lee. This has been our preview of the Knoxville Regional presented by BetOnline.